Hello, everyone, and thanks for giving us your time today for VR Download. I'm in Hamilton in New York, joined by David Heaney in London as we discuss the next steps in personal computing. I'm wearing a Quest 3 headset, and I believe David is wearing a Quest 3S over there. Each of us wearing last generation Meta avatars. We're using hand tracking with built-in microphones. And this is a live episode, and we can see your comments over here in the comments. In about 20 minutes here from our recording, there will be a cool video premiering from Mark Schramm and a whole bunch of devs out there that have put together sort of a collection of all of their work in 2024. It's only 9 minutes long, but they had pre-planned that basically embargo for then. That's going up there over on the channel. I've pinned it out there. Hello to Guy Godin, also creator of Virtual Desktop. I've got a quote from him in my write-up that we just published as we hear from David on our subjects that we're getting into today.
Well, first of all, it's great to be back live. It sucks when we have to do this pre-recorded. We love the audience interaction aspect here, so it's great to see all of you in the comments back to discuss. And we have some monumentous news this week. We're going to have 3 sections of discussion, a meta section, an Apple section, and then the Android XR section, the kind of bombshell news of today. In that meta section, we will talk about the partnership with James Cameron that is intended to bring 3D video content to Quest, so that could bring a whole new category of content that Quest is really currently missing out on. And we'll also talk about the V72 update for Quest's Horizon OS. It brings hand tracking 2.3, dramatically improved hand tracking, pass-through cutout for any keyboard, even when it's not connected to the headset, and it also brings experimental seamless Windows 11 integration. So that's the meta section. Then our middle section will be about Apple. We will briefly discuss the fact that visionOS 2.2 is out as a stable release. We talked about it in beta. The big feature it brings is wide and ultra-wide virtual display, Mac virtual display for Vision Pro users. So that's now for all Vision Pro owners on the stable channel. They can go wide and ultra-wide with their Mac virtual display. The other thing we'll talk about with the Apple section is the news, the report from Bloomberg's Mark Gurman claiming that Vision Pro could soon support PlayStation VR2's controllers. So Sony would start selling them separately from the headset. You'd be able to buy them and pair them to your Vision Pro natively. Our final section, of course, will be Android XR. We will discuss Samsung's Android XR headset. It's shipping in 2025. Ian went hands-on with it, so you can ask him all sorts of questions about the experience, and I'll grill him too with you. And we will also talk about the platform more generally, because we know that Samsung will be the first hardware partner, but there will be others. Sony, Lynx, and Xreal have all confirmed that they're building Android XR devices. So those are our 3 sections of discussion today.
I'm looking through our comments here. A lot of regular viewers, Afro Badger Sub, Arlen, and then we've got Mark Schramm tuned in. VR Gamer Dude, take care of yourself out there. I was just talking with David before this, trying to decide if we're going to do a games cast today, but take care of yourself, Don. We have an extraordinary number of game codes, and Mark, you've got obviously all the codes yourself. If you want to drop them into the comments, I won't fault you for dropping codes in our comments. I was trying to figure out how we distribute all these comments, all these codes to our regular viewers, a bunch of the people that have tuned in for that collection of games that Mark has put together. Before we get into this very stacked show, a big episode, I want to call out that video that Mark submitted to us and sent over our way. Just again, encourage you to go watch it. These shows with David and I tend to go 2 hours. Do you have 2 hours for us today? Is this gonna be one of those? Yeah.
This will be a big one. Yeah, I think so. We'll see what happens.
So we'll see how it goes. It ends up being on the longer side, and we're in straight VR this whole time. And so distributing those codes at this exact moment is going to be difficult as we try to get through those shows. So Mark, if you want to drop them through this show. But I want to take this opportunity to say thank you to Mark and the devs who sent codes in for that collection. I want to encourage all of our regular viewers to go watch that video. It's very chill, sort of laid back video running through all the updates from just dozens and dozens of games over the course of the year. So it's just premiering in a few minutes, and you can come back to this discussion. We obviously got VR Download and VR Gamescast over on podcast platforms as well. And yeah, this is a very, very large episode for us to cover. And I just want to take this moment to really praise the work that devs have done so much beautiful work this year and for the last 10 years, but this year in particular, despite sort of these store platforms not giving them great visibility for all their hard work, all those things that they add 2, 3, 4, 5, even 6 years after a game came out. So just anything we can do to put a spotlight on those old games that are getting new updates constantly is good work. So thank you to Mark for sending that video over there. Go check out the collection. It's a nice little website too. I think pinned up there as well as in the links everywhere. To go look at these games, add them to your wish list, check them out. And also need to say thank you to our patrons. That's Mike Manzano, HoloNet, Podum, that's developer of Smash Drums, as well as XR Developer News. Thank you, thank you, thank you for all of your support, as well as to all of our members. David, let's get right into that first subject here and then move through this because people are going to want to hear about Android XR.
Yeah, that is going to be a big blockbuster news at the end, but we do have other significant news to talk about today. It's really one of those weeks where there just is a lot of juice here on VR Download, so please stick with us. So at first, you might think this partnership, Meta and James Cameron partnering to bring 3D video content to Quest, is about bringing Cameron's own movies to Quest. That might be your first kind of interpretation if you just read the headline, for example. But it's important to note that that's not really what this is about. The partnership is coming through James Cameron's new company, Lightstorm Vision, which has the goal of making stereoscopic technology ubiquitous for all visual media by enabling stereoscopic 3D content creation as seamless a manner as traditional 2D. So what does that mean? That means that Lightstorm Vision is building tools that it hopes will allow traditional entertainment productions like Hollywood to film and distribute in 3D easily and at low cost. So while they're filming regular TV shows, movies, even live sports, James Cameron's new company is designed to kind of let them add on 3D as an extra layer of distribution. You know, they're distributing normally in 2D without a bunch of effort, without having to think too much, without it being a hassle that holds back the production. And obviously that means that these productions are going to want to do it. So Meta claims that this partnership will bring world-class 3D entertainment experiences spanning live sports and concerts, feature films, and TV series, bringing big-name IP to Horizon OS. So right now on Apple's Vision OS or Vision Pro, there are hundreds, I think around 200 or so 3D movies that you can either rent or buy through Apple TV or stream through your subscription on Disney Plus. The Quest headsets, Horizon OS, doesn't really have anything like that. It looks like this partnership using Cameron's new company and obviously his name and influence in the industry to try and bring this. And this is actually an exclusive partnership for multiple years at least. So it looks like we'll talk about later in the show about what that might mean for Google's Android XR wanting to have 3D movies and TV shows and sports, but it'll be interesting to see where this goes. And I'll just finish this by saying that Cameron seemed to be really, really enthused here. Here's him trying a Quest 3, and he said, "I'm convinced we're at a true historic inflection point." He's been a big fan of 3D for movies for a long time, but I think the vibe I get from what he was saying around here is that there was never really the right technology for viewing 3D. And you'll know if you listen to this show and we talked about Apple Vision Pro, that headsets are the ideal way. XR headsets, mixed reality headsets, VR headsets, whatever you want to call them. This true stereoscopic 3D, without all of the trade-offs and drawbacks of those terrible cinema 3D glasses, is the real way to watch 3D movies. And I mean, on Vision Pro, when you watch a 3D movie, it's breathtaking. You think you start to really miss it in every 2D movie. So this is something that I hope that his new company's goal does come true. I hope that every new movie that's made, just the way today it's available in 4K and HDR as well as 1080p, I hope it's also available in 3D for headsets.
Yeah, so that's kind of an response to what Apple is doing with immersive video as well as spatial video.
I think we're losing you in your connection, and maybe my side, but I feel like you're kind of. Oh, I think we've just lost
So there's
Ian
the
there.
alphabet. Am I here? Yeah, I don't know what just happened there. My reality flipped out there for a second. Yeah, so Apple has Apple Immersive Video, Apple has Spatial Video, and it's kind of Meta needs an answer to that whole pipeline of content from camera lens all the way to production. Question, of course, yeah, you brought it up, David. What does that mean for Android XR? What does it mean for potentially Steam and Steam OS if they want to have 3D movies inside of a Steam headsets in the future? It was not easy. Like even I got Big Screen Beyond up and running, and tried to pull up the Netflix app on my computer. And because I think the way the external displays were connected to my PC, it didn't even really want to let the DRM didn't want to let me watch the Netflix app on my Windows machine in my VR headset. And that's me solo with the VR headset, let alone a room full of 5 or 6 friends all watching a sporting event or a movie together, which is restricted by so many other layers here.
It'll certainly be interesting to see if they do have a co-watching solution here. That's one of the great things on Vision OS. Sure, you both have to own the subscription or content, right? You can't like one person have Disney Plus and then invite someone virtually. You would both have to have Disney Plus. But if you do have that, or you have rented the film or movie on Vision OS, you can do a share play session. Again, both people have to own it. Ideally, what we want eventually is that only one person has to own it. Just like you can walk into my house and sit on my couch and watch my Netflix. Netflix doesn't, peer through the window and check if you have a Netflix subscription. That should ideally carry through to these virtual spaces as well. It seems that this is all about spatial video, as Apple would call it, 3D video. Just, this is regular rectangular video, but with the 3D dimension that we're seeing. It'll be interesting to see whether any of this also involves 3D. It'll also be interesting to see the details here, right? We don't know what is the distribution platform. Is James Cameron going to spin up his own thing, or is this going to be through existing partnerships? Quest, Horizon OS only just got a streaming app with downloads, Prime Video, back in September for the first time. Will Prime Video add 3D content? How exactly will that work? We don't know yet, but they say they're going to share more details in 2025.
Yeah, you were so good about pointing out how the fallback of spatial videos to just regular video works really well. I'd love to see how that works in the co-watching scenarios going forward, right? If you watch a really high-res 3D version, can you co-watch that with someone who is on a flat screen standing right next to you, or maybe on a lower internet connection? Any comments you want to respond to before we move on through this episode? Yeah, but Gamertag in the audience doesn't know who Norm from Cheers is, or he's messing with us. Either way, we all feel bad for knowing Norm from Cheers and not being seen. Yeah, Norm is the guy that everybody knows sitting around the bar and the old bar from the 80s TV show that is way before your time. All right, David, what do we got next?
Yeah, I think we're ready to move on to the next subject here. We're going to talk about the V72 update for Quest's Horizon OS, the operating system that runs on Quest headsets. So I'll just run through quickly the features and improvements that it brings, and then we can discuss them. So the flagship improvement here is hand tracking 2.3. Ever since the original Oculus Quest got hand tracking in a software update, something that was a huge surprise at the time, Meta has been continuously improving it over the years. There was hand tracking 2.0, then 2.1, then 2.2, and now 2.3. So specifically, they say it has enhanced stability, improved accuracy, and lower latency. And that's very important because of how many games now are focusing around hand tracking, how other platforms, as we'll discuss later, are using hand tracking as their kind of default input system, especially in mixed reality. It's often quite suitable to have hand tracking as the input. So you want that to be stable. Another reason this matters a lot for Quest, even more than other platforms, is that it doesn't have eye tracking. So on Vision OS, you're selecting with your eyes and then clicking with your fingers. On Quest, you're doing both with your fingers, right? Either at a distance or directly by touching something. So any jitter and wobble and inaccuracy starts to feel really painful. And some people, in fact, they build their opinion of hand tracking based on the imperfections in the technology. So I always say when you're discussing your opinion on hand tracking, imagine for a second, for the sake of argument, having a perfect hand tracking system. That your hand, exactly as it is in the real world, is represented in the virtual world or in mixed reality perfectly. Then form your opinion, because that's the world we're going to be in a few years, right? The hand tracking on all of these platforms is getting better and better. We discussed last week how PlayStation VR2 is getting it. And I spoke to someone who tried that at that conference and said that it was really high quality, low latency, good accuracy. So, based on what we're seeing in hand tracking 2.3 with V72, it looks like Meta is going to continue on that path. And you can imagine, like, what's hand tracking 3.0, 4.0 going to be like one day. So that's hand tracking. Then the next major feature is experimental seamless Windows 11 integration. This was announced at Meta Connect. It was a big announcement at the time. The idea is that once you have this set up, you just look at your laptop or PC, and above the keyboard, you will see this floating prompt that says connect. You click it, and boom, you have your PC screen turns off, and a giant virtual screen replaces it. You can click to add virtual side monitors, and the idea is that it's just completely seamless. So I tried this out. I found it worked surprisingly well. I wasn't expecting it to work so well because you have to enable it as an experimental feature. Connected instantly, sharp quality, very low latency. And those core tech improvements are because Meta is actually now using Microsoft's remote desktop stack that's built into Windows 11. So the same one that if you were to download the remote desktop app on your Android phone or Mac to remote into your PC, it's using that same underlying tech stack, but with a Meta front end. And so, yes, to confirm, this does come through a direct partnership with Microsoft and Meta. And you see an image here of what this looks like for triple screens. So those are the two main ones. Do we want to discuss those first or kind of go through the details?
Yeah, well, I tried this. I'm seeing people in the comments talk about trying to get the QR code, trying to scan the QR code with the Windows 11 integration. I want to say I messed with it for a good 45 minutes or a half hour, sort of like doing the cycle of restarting the PC, restarting the headset, restarting the app, doing all of the possible permutations of that. And eventually I did scan the QR code, got my 3 windows up. We had the 2 extra virtual displays and had them all up. It seemed like it reminded me of early multitasking, a little bit janky, but still it was all there. But sorry, go ahead, go to specifics here, David. So I just wanted to make that comment that it was not easy, but I did get it to work eventually after many permutations of messing with it.
No, it's interesting to hear your experience. I've seen such mixed responses to this. Again, we have to point out this is currently an experimental feature for a reason. It's in beta right now. So presumably they're going to fix some of these things. Steam Link, when it first came out, for example, had a bunch of bugs and was a kind of buggy, messy experience. And today I love Steam Link. It's great. I use Virtual Desktop mainly, but it's still, Steam Link works perfectly well. I find this worked pretty much instantly. I was really surprised. I just the QR code scanned as quickly as it came up, because I was sitting right in front of the monitor and everything worked. The real advantage of this over the competing solutions is that you can bring this up inside a VR app, right? So you can be in a VR game or experience and bring this up because of Horizon OS seamless multitasking. If you're specifically only wanting to if you're specifically and only wanting to do this use case, I'd still prefer Virtual Desktop. There are extra features. We talked about last week how you can cut out a pass-through, cut out on your desk for peripherals. We talked about how much nicer the Virtual Desktop environments are. The Quest home environments are just awful, and I won't start that rant again, but they are just terrible in comparison. Virtual Desktop passes through input. People are pointing out that this doesn't pass through input. This is designed to be used with your keyboard and mouse connected to your PC, not your headset. So this is not ideal for like a remote scenario. But again, it's impressive how seamless this is once it's set up, right? So people are having issues with the setup, but I mean, it just works for me now. It's so quick. There's no app to launch. Even the app that you have to download on the PC side. So you download an app on the Microsoft Store called Mixed Reality Link. That is going to be built into Windows 11 after the beta process. So you will just have to press Windows key and I can't remember what the exact code is, but you press the Windows key and a thing, and the QR code will pop up, and your headset will just scan on. So even that setup in the future is going to get easier.
So Afro Badger asking, can the screens be freely placed? It's similar to this, and it's similar to I think the OS level feature in Horizon OS, where these things like stack out to the
Well, it
sides
is
as you
right.
add additional ones, right?
Yeah, these are Horizon OS windows. So anything you do today in your Quest with your Windows, as in docking them in here or taking them out, that's the thing. These are not. This is not like an immersive app. These are just 2D Horizon OS windows.
So that video is premiering right now over on our channel from Mark Schramm, who has been Santa Claus out in our comments, dropping codes on random viewers. Thank you for that, Mark, and thank you to the devs who uh, submitted codes for us there. It's a really great benefit to see those freebies given out to our audience. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And then also just I want to encourage you to pass along the goodwill this holiday season, right? If you enjoy the game, go buy a code and gift it to a friend. Get pay it forward and try to get more VR games out there, and get the recognition that these are hardworking, real people behind the games that are out there making all this work. So back to this feature. Yeah, David.
Yeah, so Subcog is pointing out something very interesting that I noted at the time. We're going to talk in a little second about the Vision OS 2 implementation of this idea. We must point out that this idea of having the little connect virtual button float above the screen is directly copied from Vision OS. There are some things that Meta can rightly say we've been working on for years, and these are obvious solutions that are just the same kind of design space wherever you come from. This one, it's very clear that they were inspired by Vision OS. And I'm sure in future, though, will be things that Vision OS takes from Meta. I mean, the introduction in Vision OS 2 of their pinch gesture, that obviously came from Meta. So we'll see a lot of cross-pollination. And now with the third platform that we'll discuss later in the show. But Subcog is pointing out an interesting difference where with Meta's solution, you get virtual extra side monitors for a triple monitor setup. With Apple's solution on Vision OS, instead of having extra monitors, they just widen the one monitor. Which you prefer is going to be down to preference, but it's you'd think in theory at least it doesn't really make sense to keep these seams from the physical world in the virtual world. The only reason that you have a triple monitor setup like that in theory, I guess, rather than if you had a monitor that could magically expand out to the exact shape and size you want, would you pick a triple monitor instead?
Yeah, I don't know if I'm going to get us all lost down a rabbit hole here, but one of the people don't understand how this production. Let's use the example of this studio and how it gets produced to explain the situation I have, the problem I have. So David has a PC version of this studio that runs on a PC, and it renders out the camera view that we have mirrored inside of our headsets, full screen, onto a 1080p screen. So that's how we get we set that up to OBS. Our audio gets put together on that screen, and it's exactly like the camera view, right? That takes up a full 1080p screen. And if I ever want to broadcast individually, like on my own, I typically need a dual display setup to make this work. I need one display as my control center for everything, and then I need a second display that mirrors your studio. There's a bunch of things that work like that, right? There's full screen movie watching, where it wants to take over a whole other screen, whole monitor, and then you go and work in this monitor, and maybe you have comms in the third monitor. But we're changing. The paradigms are changing. We've got displays, windows, monitors, like these ideas of how you frame content around you are blown apart by Vision OS. You can have 60 windows all floating around you at different spots if you really wanted to. How do we get that out of these three monitors, and what's the solution here that everything is going to work?
Yeah, I think that's a really great point of how these virtualizing these screens changes the dynamic completely. The other thing is that you have a mixture of these panels, which are coming from your PC, the PC monitors, and then apps that are running on your headset. And some of those are web apps, just fancy websites. Some of them are native Android apps or iPad apps or Vision OS apps, depending on what your headset is. The virtual desktop developer, Guy Godin, in the comments is saying give the user the option. I think that's probably ideal, right? So you can, in theory, have one app on a side monitor here and then merge these two monitors into one ultra-wide. That seems ideal. But interestingly, both of these native platform solutions, Microsoft and Meta's and Apple's right now are taking like a strongly opinionated position rather than letting the user choose there.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Guy, and your commentary there. Let the user choose, and the user is going to choose here, right? In the next 6 months, we're going to start seeing, I think, a lot of rapid innovation here in this space, and I can't wait to see what Guy does with virtual desktop on Android XR. We'll get into that later on in this show. What do we got? What else we got here before we start moving through this?
Sure. So I'll just run down quickly the other features of the V72 update for Quest's Horizon OS. So a major feature here is pass-through cutout for any keyboard. This is something that we actually saw last month in the public test channel build of Horizon OS. So it was available for testers who are enrolled in that. Now this is rolling out to everyone. I say rolling out because all of these updates and even the sub-features get rolled out at random to headsets. So you never really know when you get a feature until it just shows up. Unfortunately, that's just the way Meta operates. There's no magical way around that. But if you do get this feature, whatever keyboard you have, as long as the headset sees a keyboard-looking thing, I wonder if there are other objects that it misidentifies for a keyboard. Who knows? It will cut it out in your virtual home. And as we discussed last week, apps are actually able to use this via Meta's mixed reality SDKs. So the crucial thing about this compared to the old behavior being the tracked keyboards that were like on a limited whitelist, is that this works for any keyboard, even if it's not connected to the headset. It's not checking over Bluetooth. It's literally just looking for a keyboard shaped thing and then cutting it out as in pass-through. So this looks a little less clean and less refined than the old behavior of a few select tracked keyboards that were brought into VR as a 3D model, but that's a losing battle to try and model every keyboard ever made. That's just not going to work. And this is going to benefit a lot more people. And of course, it's a huge, huge advantage when your keyboard is connected to your PC to still be able to see it. So this is cool. Did you anything you want to discuss about that, or?
I tested this, and I tested it with a pocket keyboard. I was surprised that it even cut out the pocket keyboard reasonably well. So that was like a folding iClever little keyboard that you could slip into a pocket, folds out halfway, and you sit on your lap, and it even cut that out reasonably well. Let's see. Guy in the comments saying this new AnyTrack keyboard will come to virtual desktop in the near future. It was just launched with V72, so it will take some time. So very cool to see that confirmation live in the studio with Guy out there that's coming very soon to virtual desktop.
Yeah, that's great. It's great that this is available in the SDKs. It's not just in Horizon Home. So we should see any app that wants to can bring your keyboard in. And it's just such a game changer when you want to be in a fully immersive environment to get that focus that you always talk about, being in a not pass-through, but a real VR environment to do some work. But there is always that hassle of the fact that you're still in the real world, in physical reality. You want to have to interact with these objects. And yeah, this is a great solution, as well as the one we discussed last week from Virtual Desktop, where you can, literally just like cut out a section of your desk at will. That's another cool solution.
Now get us a pass-through cat. Pass-through cats, please. Platforms, give me pass-through cats. All right. We're ready to move on yet?
Just a few things to point out in the V72 update. I'll just run through them quickly because those were the big ones. These are just the minor ones. So they have a new gallery app, quick access to your images and videos. It's not really particularly interesting, but it's notable. Automatic call captions. It's an important accessibility issue. That is important for people who are hard of hearing, so that they get automatic live transcriptions for if they're in a call, in a party chat, or in a messenger or WhatsApp call. And the other one is one for you, Ian, a travel mode indicator on the menu bar. So there was a show, I think, a month ago where Ian was coming in complaining about my tracking's broken, and it turned out he had travel mode turned on. So Meta has specifically listened to Ian. There was actually a thread there where Meta's head of VR, Mark Rabkin, was checking in on that, and now there is a little indicator to warn you of that. Frictionless home environment. This is an interesting one. If you are in pass-through and you go straight in to VR, but you don't have a boundary set up, instead of asking you and nagging you anymore, they'll just put you straight into a stationary boundary. And finally, Instagram direct messages. So they already had WhatsApp and Messenger, but if you like to message people on Instagram, you can now do that in your Quest headset. So that concludes our discussion of the MetaQuest section and specifically the features of Quest V72.
Yeah, Clay asking for coffee cup cutouts, and I saw someone else mentioning that they fall back to Immersed because Immersed really, let's give credit where it's due there, that Immersed has innovated with a lot of these features all at once in a work environment. They did the cutouts, you could cut out specific shapes very early, as well as multiple displays. And obviously, Guy Godin and Virtual Desktop is out there doing a lot of amazing work too, but I thought it was worth mentioning that one before we move on here. I saw like keychain, like I think they're asking about mini keyboards. So I'm assuming that's like this size keyboard. I have 3 or 4 of these around the house that I've tried in various configurations. I don't think those are going to get cut out by this, but I haven't tried it.
Give it a try. I think our viewers would like to know next week. Jonas is making a very interesting point that for people asking about extra tracked objects, saying a rectangle is very easy to track, a random household object requires more training and resources. That's absolutely true, but we do want to see it eventually. We've seen Meta, add a remarkable number of computer vision features to their Quest headsets over time. If it doesn't happen in a Quest 3 update one day, I think we'll see it in Quest 4 in terms of, tracking people, tracking pets, and cutting them out. Vision OS already does the people thing. If someone walks into your room, if you have people awareness enabled in the settings, you will see like a pass-through cutout of that person. Ideally, that's how we want these headsets to work, right? If you're sitting there playing VR or doing some work in VR or whatever you're doing, and your child or just someone else or your cat walks into the room, you want to see that so that you don't walk into them. And people are pointing out that you want to, have your beer tracked, your coffee tracked. Eventually, you would imagine some sort of UX where you can kind of click a cutout object and then tap the object physically, and then it gets cut out. But as James O'Loughlin is rightly pointing out, it's not free at all to run a computer vision model on a battery and mobile processor. It's just going to be a matter of how much NPU overhead do they have, the neural processing unit inside the Snapdragon chip. How much battery does this cost? How efficient is the model? But every generation of Quest, from Quest 1 to 2 to 3, we've seen an enormous increase in the NPU capacity. So we expect to see that to happen in a Quest 4 eventually.
So, gosh, a lot of thoughts going through my head right now. I'm expecting a bunch of people that were over there on the games VR premiere to come back over here to our show, our longer form show. And I'm looking at our rundown here, David. It's the first time that I can recall having a Meta section, an Apple section, and a Google section properly framed out like this in our show. And it speaks to this moment in time that we are, these are the big leagues now. These are the big leagues, and this is really happening. We see a lot of people wanting the Valve bomb to drop. We'll see, they'll pick their time and moment of their choosing. But it's wild to see that we are running down the list of the next generation of personal computing. Like I've done this hint at the outset of these shows where it's like we're talking about the next steps in personal computing. No, this is the current steps of personal computing. This is happening now, and every single time we update this now, we're talking about software updates to our reality. Like that's ridiculous and accurate. So I just want to say thank you to all the new viewers, returning viewers, silent viewers. We've got a lot of really helpful regular commenters out there who can answer your questions out there in the comments. Become a member at UploadVR.com. Support our work directly in the journalism work that we do. So we're building here to Apple next. And then we've got our Android Google section at the end of the show where I expect that to be a big, meaty discussion with our audience.
Yeah, so let's just quickly note this visionOS 2.2 stable release. We have discussed this over and over again in the beta. I've spoken to a visionOS developer of a quite popular app who tells me that their analytics show that a decent chunk of visionOS users, Vision Pro owners, are on the visionOS beta. But for those who aren't, this feature is now available to them. So the visionOS 2.2 stable is out. It brings this. This is the ultra-wide mode. There's also a wide mode that's kind of a midpoint between the default behavior and the ultra-wide if you want to just keep it within your field of view. I actually find that I quite enjoy the wide one, the midpoint, because it does kind of just perfectly fit the horizontal field of view of Vision Pro at a comfortable viewing distance. The other thing that visionOS 2.2 brings is support for spatial videos and spatial photos in Safari. So you no longer have to like download them. You can just kind of click into them and go view spatial. That's great to see. But yeah, I think we've referenced this, we've discussed this, so we don't really need to go into too much depth here. Other than to say, I've seen a lot of positive coverage around this quite recently. There are a lot of outlets who were maybe a bit down on Vision Pro or were kind of ignoring it for a while. That have come along with really positive coverage. I saw The Verge say something along the lines of, "This is very close to a killer app," and you saw that kind of coverage because it is remarkable that you can be on a 10-hour plane ride and have your MacBook with you and your Apple Vision Pro in your backpack, and then you get this enormous virtual workspace. And some of the people who I've seen raving about this are video editors, audio editors who have these giant long timelines that they're so used to having to scroll through on this 16:9 display. And for certain projects, they can literally just have the entire timeline span this ultra wide display. They should really call this like gigawide or something, because this is wider than some of the wider ultra. This is
a gigawide. All right, a virtual gigawide. I love it. And there's an ultra wide subreddit that's just like the PC subreddits, but all for their ultra wides. And these people have an ultra wide. Like I've seen double stacked ultra wides. And you go to the comments, and the person's like, "You know what you got to do? The bottom ultra wide has to be flipped upside down so that the double ultra wides fit together like Lego pieces a little bit better." And it's hysterical to see these people go on and on and on about just the right placement for your ultra wide. And now we've got virtual gigawides that we can put anywhere we want. And when you realize you've got a 50-pound thing here that gets mounted to a wall versus a 0-gram thing that is 1-to-1 a better experience. The fact that you can tune out your environment instantaneously to focus on this thing, it's not even in the same ballpark of like capability. Like I want the virtual gigawide.
Yeah, exactly. And I was going to say not just instantly, but gradually. We have some commenters here, Lewis, saying this is a funny marketing photo because the person has to crane their neck up to look and see the middle of the screen. And a related comment from Jonas saying that this enormous screen is only comfortable to look at in VR mode or if you have that big room, or else you get depth collisions, right? Because if you want to have this enormous thing, but you're right in front of a wall, there's a depth conflict. Well, the reason I brought up the gradual part is because the unique aspect of Vision Pro compared to other platforms is that you have this little dial. I've said many times I should have called it the reality dial. It's actually called the digital crown. Whatever you want to call it, you can tune to have the front half of your existence be virtual and then the sides and the rear be real. So you can still be aware of someone walking into your room. You're still aware of, your pets or anything around you, while in front of you, instead of having that depth conflict, you're in this near photorealistic virtual environment. To go back on my virtual environments rant, Meta's is terrible, virtual desktops is great, Apple's are stunning, like they're just outstanding. I've actually heard that they cost hundreds of thousands of dollars each to build, each visionOS immersive environment. So they're well worth it in terms of the quality. And that's how you would really want to set this up if you're in most rooms. Obviously, if you do have this enormous room with a massive amount of space in front of you, you could move your desk to the middle of the room and have space. But I think for that focus, for that immersion, you may just want to do like half VR, half AR.
Doing a dim saying my best friend just got a gigawide monitor and he's turned into such a snobby turd about it. Ultra wides turn people into monsters, and now we're the virtual ultra wides. We're even snobbier than those snobs, right? Like, and especially when it's on a 3500. Like, you don't even get the $300 Quest 3S argument, right? Where it's like I'm saving money. I'm no, I'm not. I'm
Yeah.
expending money to be even this much more snobbish. Um, but I do love the gigawide monitor meme we've got going here. Man, it's really something to pull up something like Stardew Valley at a super widescreen Factorio, any of these games you love that just you stretch it out to just a massive, massive size, and then right next to it you've got your constellation of other windows, and like that's all from your PC, right? Imagine you've also got all the windows beyond, right? It's windows all the way down. It's fantastic, and we're really, really getting going here.
Yeah, back in my Apple Vision Pro review back in February, um, I said that Vision Pro turns screens into software. It's the first XR headset that is really good at turning screens into software. We'll talk later when we talk about Android XR about how that's going to be a core use case for all of these headsets eventually, and in the near term for high-end headsets that are really good at it. The obvious thing that we have to always say is that yes, today these headsets are heavy and bulky, and it's not a incredibly appealing thing for a majority of people to want to do this, because even though the experience is great, it doesn't matter if it hurts your face. People don't want to use a product that hurts them for obvious reasons. Uh, but you, again, the future vision headsets that over time get lighter and thinner and sleeker will run this same Vision OS. And we got Vision OS 2 now in September. Next year, we expect to hear all about Vision OS 3 in June at Apple's WWDC. And it will just be getting better and better as the kind of percentage of people that enjoy using the headset because of its weight and bulk increases over time as those things go down.
You know, it's funny. I sent an email over to Valve to ask if there was an embargo that we missed, and we were told no, we have not missed an embargo. So I'm gonna try to answer those rumors out there. You know, that doesn't. You know, Valve will choose the moment and place when it wants to send out information, and it could be any time. It could be any time, but they're telling us we haven't missed anything here. So we will hear from them when they're ready.
Valve
Um,
is very good about shutting down leaks. There have been times where things have leaked out of Valve, but there's also been a lot of times where they announced something that no one really knew was going to come, and that's obviously because Gabe Newell can just threaten people that if they leak something, they lose their Steam account and all their games. And well, I mean, what's worse than that?
yeah, and I mean, like that's the beauty.
I'm kidding, to be clear.
Sorry, I mean, so sorry. Mark is back in our comments, dropping Santa keys on our audience. Thank you for that. We have a large audience tuning in. I think we're probably going to clear the 200 number. It would be amazing to see us get back to those. I think we even broke 300 at one point on this show. But it's amazing to see everyone sort of all show up when it becomes time to pay attention to the VR headsets again. Um, I think we might hit large numbers here when we go to the Android XR section. Um, the the thing about that Heaney was mentioning about Valve is really important to me. It brings up we had Zach in our studio here, the creator of Vertigo and Vertigo 2, Vertigo Remastered. Amazing games from a single developer out there that has put out so much love into their project Weirdness for you to play at home in your VR headsets across the world. And that's a single person who just like, I like PCs and I like the graphics that you can do with PCs. And they went and made it, they went and did it, they went and shipped it. And I have to keep I'm going to become a broken record with you, David, about this because we have to like retrain a lot of our audience that isn't used to thinking of these devs as one single person team. They're used to thinking of it as like EA with thousands of people and a corporate executive making free to pay decisions for you. No, that's not what the VR market has been for about 10 years now. And I just need to keep harping on that. When we see these codes being dropped into the audience, like, go try to forward that gift you've been given to somebody else, because you're paying a dev real money, like you're putting real food in their mouth and shelter over their head by buying their games, and these are real people out there. So I got to keep saying that over and over and over again as Mark drops the codes in our audience. We ready to talk about the next Apple section here?
Yeah, this is the other piece of Apple news. This was a real bombshell, and I'll have to hand it to Ian. You said that we should expect even more unexpected partnerships, and here we reportedly have one. I want to just start by saying that this is a report. This is not officially announced by Apple or Sony. However, Bloomberg's Mark Gurman has a very good track record when it comes to reporting Apple's moves in advance. He reported a lot of the details of Vision Pro before it was even acknowledged to exist by Apple, never mind announced. So we do have a reason to believe that his reporting is likely to be accurate here. But again, I just want to put that caveat that this isn't confirmed. But his reporting here is that Apple and Sony are working to bring native support for PlayStation VR2's Sense controllers to Vision Pro. And while Sony currently doesn't sell these separately, even for replacements, which is a travesty, right? That's just not good. If you break your controller, you kind of have to just be at the whim of hoping support helps you if you're within warranty. And, I don't know what happens if you're not. But once this feature comes online, according to Gurman, Sony will start selling a pair of Sense controllers as a separate product, available on Apple.com, on Apple Retail, and presumably on Sony's partnered retailers and direct as well. And then you would just buy this, connect it to your Vision Pro, and now you have native support for controllers. So that would include the Vision OS interface. You'll be able to interact with all the same interface elements throughout Vision OS using controllers instead of the gaze and pinch interaction method. And it would also, of course, include games. So developers would be able to port over some of the titles that are currently today on Quest, on PlayStation VR2, on Steam VR, and leverage the needed input that these titles require. So Gurman finished his report by saying that he actually expected Apple and Sony to announce this weeks ago, but that the rollout has been postponed. And this is how he finished. He said, "My expectation is that an announcement will still come at some point unless it gets abruptly scrapped."
I can't wait. I want these controllers on a little dock. I need them immediately. I sent off my pair to Don over in Missouri, so he has my pair that I had since launch or from early on, and this is going to be a match made in heaven when they actually ship. I mean, this is the best haptics experience you could have in current consumer hardware, with the best visual experience you can get in consumer standalone hardware. So I want that combination yesterday. It sounds amazing. I want it. And I'm not going to mention the other controllers from the other console maker. But yes, those can go. You can. I'll burn them all up in a fire. I'll throw them out in a trash fire if this goes and works with all features supported.
You've heard it here, folks. For the VR download drinking game, Ian will be throwing away his Joy-Cons and burning them if this really
okay,
launches.
no, I'm sorry. I retract everything. But I do want to say thank you to Steve for the donation, and thank you, Mark. Again, I want to say thank you to Mark and all the devs out there who submitted that video for us. I don't know how many people were over there watching the premiere video, just 9 minutes, showing all the updates from 2024, and then just he's Santa Claus in our comments here, dropping codes for us as we get ready to talk about this last subject. I'm not ready to move on, though, David. I'm too excited about the PlayStation VR2 controllers idea.
There is a lot to discuss here, right? We have James O'Loughlin. My comments aren't fully working anymore, but James O'Loughlin is showing skepticism from what I read, saying that 6DoF requires something to do the heavy lifting. I mean, the idea here is that, according to the report, this is something that they've both worked on for months. Vision Pro would track the controllers just like Quest 3 tracks its controllers. In fact, just like PlayStation VR does, right? This thing has IR cameras on the side and on the front, and these things have infrared LEDs under the plastic that are tracked as a constellation. So this would be direct integration. I don't see any reason why Vision Pro couldn't track these just like any other headset. You're not going to get tracking behind your head, but you don't get that on Quest 3 by default unless you go out and buy the Pro controllers. James O'Loughlin's asking, if that was the case, why didn't Apple just make their own? It's a really good question. I think some of it will just be about pride, right? That they have kind of come out and said, with this thing, you don't need clunky VR. Some of it will be about that, these exist already. And Apple already sells the PlayStation 5 gamepad in its stores and websites and heavily markets them for your iPhone, for your iPad, Apple TV, your Mac, and your Vision Pro, right? You can already go out and buy the regular, flat screen gamepad for PlayStation 5 and pair it to this. The other thing is that they have good corporate relations, right? Half of the components in this thing are made by Sony. The displays, half of these I think all of these sensors are actually made by Sony, but don't quote me on that. It's at least most of them. And I think there's some other components in there from Sony as well. So, why not, I guess? If these exist, Sony has the, economies of scale that they're already building these for PSVR2 users. Price is an interesting question. Maybe $100 for a pair, 120.
Really interesting things to think about here. And I liked Big saying that controllers are for gaming. That's why Apple doesn't design for games. These, Apple Touch isn't a product category yet. It's if you had Oculus Touch becoming what is it? What's it called now? Quest Touch Plus. I don't know what the naming is anymore. I'm dead.
It's just Touch Plus.
Yeah. But you've got this thing that wants to be a sense, wants to serve another sense, and the first job is just vision, right? Let's augment your sense of vision. Let's change and convert your sense of vision, make it super vision, with all those digital elements over it. But to I think the Biggs's point, or what you're sort of bringing up here, if you get really good resistive haptics, you get really good precision tracking that's very low latency and high speed. You have a base to start building towards Apple Touch in 5 years from now. But I don't know that you necessarily need a product like Apple or Meta proved that the little Touch Plus controllers are good enough for a lot of this. So you don't need, there's a whole nother leap, a whole nother product line needed for us to get to gloves and really truly get your sense of touch with your fingertips.
Yeah, I guess we should say what we will also be saying later about Android XR. It's that Biggs and others are bringing up is that there is a fragmentation here. If you're building a Vision OS app, you already have, a total addressable market of about 500,000 people, the number of people that own this headset. Then only a percentage are going to go out and buy these controllers, right? They're not there in the box. If you're building a Quest app or a PSVR2 app, you know that everyone has the controllers. So that's quite different in that sense. But you can still imagine that over time, this allows gaming experiences to come to Vision Pro. A good analogy people have made here is Apple Pencil. And one thing you should remember is that Apple Pencil is not the only way to have a stylus on Apple's systems like iPad. On the iPad specifically, sorry. They also have Logitech ones. There are third parties who make officially supported Apple Pencil alternatives. So this is kind of just like a similar situation. But one thing people pointed out is that some of the top paid iPad apps rely on the Apple Pencil. They are designed that they are theoretically usable with your finger, but they are just terrible. They are fully optimized around the Apple Pencil. So there is precedent for an accessory to work. It's the exception, right? The rule is that accessories don't work in this context because the install base doesn't all have them. But if this adds enough value, and it does, right? There are just so many games and experiences that you need controllers for. Then you could see this shipping units, especially since it's going to be sold, according to Gurman, on Apple's website and in Apple stores. You could go into an Apple store and walk out with a bag in your hand with a Vision Pro and a pair of Sense controllers for gaming. We'll have to see how well it's adopted, though.
Yeah, I put this we'll get into the whole Google section here at the end, but these are bulky controllers. I just need to talk about how big they are, and that makes it so much less like this is what you keep the controllers at home. They go on a charging stand. You don't necessarily put them in a bag just because they're that bulky. I want really low profile controllers for out when I go, but even then, like having both. I've had situations where you needed the right controller because it has the menu button on it instead of the left controller because it doesn't have the menu button. It has like a utility button. Um,
Yeah, I mean, these are definitely bulky, right? They are kind of the last generation of VR controllers like you had on Quest 2 and Pico 4, the original one, not Ultra, and headsets before, where you do have these large tracking rings. And now, because the headset cameras have got higher resolution, they're able to process more, they're able to run faster. You kind of now have in modern controllers like Touch Plus and the Pico 4 Ultra controllers, the IR LEDs are just in the face itself. So that certainly does add some clunk. The design of this, though, still allows you to bring the controllers together like this, which is a important part. But there are angles at which you're going to bash the plastic together, and I think that's what really matters here. So there is a kind of irony in that you have this sort of sleek Vision Pro headset with these big clunky controllers, and if Apple did build their own, they likely would be able to have something smaller. The other thing we should point out that James O'Loughlin is bringing up is that, as we've discussed before, there's a third party company that's making essentially a clone of the Touch Pro controllers for Vision Pro called a Surreal Touch. So we expect that should launch in the next few months, according to Surreal Touch. They are probably going to be somewhat annoyed by this news because it kind of removes a lot of the market potential for their product. Of course, their product is going to be, on the order of triple the price, but has cameras built in, and so is not only sleeker but also can work at any aspect. But of course, will they be able to interface in such a way that any content that's built for the native Vision OS PSVR2 controller support also works with this? We don't know yet. That'll be interesting to see how open is Apple's support for tracked controllers. Something you always
yeah,
bring up.
yeah. There's the landscape is littered with a whole bunch of game pads and even I want to say iPad like accessories to put the iPad in to turn it into an arcade cabinet, a little miniature arcade cabinet that would like dock into and have a little controller panel. Like there are a lot of accessories that shipped on iOS before Apple formally supported that input schemes, and then those controllers all got funky after that switchover happened. They didn't work in some cases, and that's why I'm scared of this space, right? Like until it's robustly, formally supported, it's not super interesting. Even though I support my Joy Cons and I protect them.
Yeah, we have yet to see a standard for track controllers. It's not something that exists yet. It's very possible that 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years from now, these companies will come together through an industry body of some sort, a consortium, and form a open standard for track controllers. But right now, it just seems that they need to land on a kind of standardized approach first before that does arrive. But yeah, it would be ideal to one day be able to, just in the same way that you can use your gamepad from your PlayStation on your PC or Xbox on your PC, though of course you can't use your Xbox controller on your PlayStation or your PlayStation controller on your Xbox, I should point out, but you can use any of them on your PC or on your phone or on your tablet or on your, Steam Link or something, a Steam Deck.
It's funny to think of, yeah, this threshold we're getting close to with game pads or touch controllers where they're like X input on game pads, right? Like they're just universal across the board, a thing you've got. And it's like now I'm gonna need a game touch controllers that I can Bluetooth connect to three different devices. Like I need a switch on the bottom, like I do on my mouse and keyboard, in order to switch it to different devices. Like that's what we're getting to close. And oh gosh, there's all the other innovations we've seen here with these sort of tracked objects, right? The Pencil app over on Meta. You take the controller, you put it on a piece of paper, and it basically traps the piece of paper, turns it into a tracked object, and now you're learning how to do all sorts of paper-based work.
And,
Uh,
and the Logitech stylus, right? You have a
yeah,
literal track stylus on Quest as well. So Meta kind of has its own ecosystem for tracked objects. It's, theoretically, it is the first to do that.
I like Clay's comment here, and I'll take a pause here to do our little transition before we get into Android. But I like Clay's comment here saying hit like or Valve won't announce anything at the Game Awards. I appreciate that because I did read out, I did read the Valve email during this broadcast, telling us that we didn't miss an embargo. So I appreciate the real ones out there know we're on top of things and trying to get the latest for everyone. I want to say thank you to Mark again out there for gathering together all those codes for, oh, there he goes again. He's Santa Clausing through the audience again. Go check out that link. That's the video that's teased up there. That's a 9-minute video covering dozens and dozens of VR games that released in 2024. These devs don't have marketing teams. They don't have dev relations aren't going to be able to help them get more attention for their games. That's the job of you, our commenters, you, our audience. You have a dev out there who's done something beautiful, something that affected you this year. Go the extra mile, show them love, share out their links, gift the game to somebody else. Do all that because it legitimately makes a real difference in these developers' lives to get that support. We've got a regular viewer out there. Is it Not Suspicious? Airspace Defender devs out there. They submitted for our showcase over the summer. Go look at their summer submission. Go look at their winter submission, and you'll see a game that's ripened in time. They've added a bunch of really detailed animations. Looks a lot better. I went and played it the other night and was getting pretty carried away with it. And it's cool to see devs improve their work, and they do it for the love of the work that they're doing. Like they love the software, and then they love the reactions they see from you out on YouTube. They love the reactions they see in our comments. We have a lot of silent viewers out there that feed off of all the good things, positive things you say about their work. So thank you for those comments. Keep them coming. Thank the devs out there in the comments, both on this video, on the other video. Leave them reviews. Let them know that you've mattered to their lives, and keep that good cycle going.
Right, let's go to our final discussion, the Android XR section. So we've had our Meta section, we've had our Apple section. Now let's discuss Android XR. So if you didn't see the news today, this is Samsung's first standalone headset. It's running Google's new platform, Android XR, and it is powered by Qualcomm's Snapdragon XR2 Plus Gen 2 chipset. So that's the higher end version of the chipset that's in Quest 3. It's got higher CPU and GPU clock speeds, and it also supports more sensors and higher resolution display output. So the chip is a souped up version of the chip in Quest 3. The operating system is a new platform from Google, Android XR. This is the kind of the third big one. There are, multiple minor ones that exist today. You have, Pico OS and you have Vive standalone OS, but realistically today, there are two players that matter on a market size scale in the consumer space: Vision OS and Horizon OS, Apple and Meta. And now we have Google and Android XR as a third player. And this will be the first piece of hardware from that runs Android XR from Samsung. Samsung will be the first, that's confirmed, but they're not the only. Sony, Lynx, and Xreal have confirmed that they are building Android XR devices as well. That Sony one, I suspect, might be that standalone headset that they have been showing off, their enterprise standalone that they've been showing off for like a year now, but that's not confirmed. It would make a lot of sense if that's what this is going to run, but we don't know that. When it comes to Lynx told UploadVR that the existing R1 will stay as is, so it will run, Lynx's own Android fork, but they are working on a new headset that will run Android XR. The Xreal one is a really interesting question because we don't know what they're going to do. So Google has talked about Android XR as scaling all the way from mixed reality headsets all the way down to HUD glasses. So just really simple glasses that have a little, notification, heads-up display style thing. So in earlier reports, we'd heard that they kind of had actually called these two separate things, Android XR and Android Micro XR. But now it looks like they're kind of talking about this whole spectrum of Android XR as just this one thing. But it does seem that in effect, they are kind of distinct implementations. So just to recap there, we expect, so Samsung has confirmed in 2025, it's launching its headset. We expect a Sony headset to follow, potentially this one, potentially a successor to this one. We expect a Lynx headset eventually, a new Lynx headset that runs this. And that's direct competition to what Meta wants to do with its Horizon OS. Meta hopes that its Horizon OS can serve this exact same function. It has partnered with Asus and Lenovo so far, confirmed, and we haven't yet seen an Asus or Lenovo headset reveal, but it looks like this is going to be a fierce competing space. The big question for the industry over the next decade, and the rest of this decade, I should say, will be, is there space for three platforms? There hasn't been for, PCs really on a consumer mass scale. There hasn't been for smartphones, right? Windows Phone died. There is in some markets, right? In the tablet market, you could argue there are three. In the TV market, there's space for three. Which kind of market is this? Is this a two-player race where Google and Meta are going to fiercely compete and one of them dies off in 5 or 10 years? Or is this a market that has space for three distinct platforms?
Whew. I have no notes for this section and what I'm going to say. So give me those questions. Let me know what you're curious about. I will not be able to answer a lot of the questions you want because Google and Samsung were non-specific on a lot of the questions you want to know about that I had in my mind. They didn't want to answer things like specs. I didn't want to talk about those things. They also, during a section of a face-to-face discussion interview after the demo, they basically made it clear that they wanted my feedback. They wanted to know what I thought about all this, and I'm going to talk about two things. First off, I like soft straps now on headsets. I like the fact that you can wear the headset to bed, you can wear the headset in a chair, and lay your head back against the seat and not be bothered. So I made that comment to them, and I'm making it all to you. There's a lot of people in our audience that the circles are overlapping large between gamers who want to move their heads around really fast with a track controller and a hard strap. But I want to make that case about soft straps being a problem, even though this has a hard strap.
Yeah, I was just going to say, for our audio viewers, you want to make clear that you're kind of saying that in a negative sense, and that this has a hard strap so that you can't lay back in bed. So this does look to have a more balanced design than Vision Pro, right? You don't have all the weight in the front. It's interesting how vague they're being on the specs. So maybe we'll run down what they have said, right? They've said that this will have state-of-the-art displays, whatever that means, eye tracking, hand tracking, voice recognition, and a balanced design. Other than that, and the chip that it uses, which is the XR2 Plus Gen 2, I don't think they've said anything more specific, have they?
No, just so Qualcomm says it's sort of in that family, right? Everything here was vague. They were very, I got the real impression they wanted to be non-specific on almost everything. Because I wouldn't be surprised if they just wanted to see how the holiday season goes and how sales goes before locking in some of their final specs on a final piece of hardware here. But maybe I'm wrong on that.
It'll be very interesting to see for this headset where the price comes. It looks like, I would guess, and this is a complete guess, that we're talking about $2,000, something on the order of that. It doesn't have the front display. It has, as far as we know, one chip. It doesn't have the kind of extreme need to maintain a very high margin that Apple has. I could see, and they did say, I think, that they kind of understood that Vision Pro pricing was a difficulty. So I wonder what we'll see. Do you have any kind of guesses of where we would see this?
Yeah, so it's fascinating. So I sat down with my interview with them, with Google on my left and Samsung on my right, and tried to figure out what questions they would answer and what questions they would not. And is this, you don't want to ask the same questions that they're not going to answer every single time. One of those was, can you give me an indication of price? Can you tell me how many sensors are on this device? How many cameras? And they're like, we don't really want to get into all of that. There were several under the surface, all over it, and as many
Yeah.
as
You,
as many as I've on the Vision Pro, I would think, but there's a lot.
yeah, you can see for is presumably fisheye black and white tracking cameras here, and two presumably pass-through cameras here. Apart from that, it's difficult to see. Are there face tracking cameras in here? We know there are obviously eye tracking cameras. Does it have a depth sensor? Is it lidar? They're not talking about any of the specifics yet. This is very much so is just a. I think they wanted to focus on Android XR, right? They wanted to say this is the platform. This is our big bet in the future of spatial computing, and just for the sake of demonstration, here's the first headset. And they were very sort of, from what I see from the announcement, insistent of saying, and glasses too in the future. They kind of almost wanted to focus more on the glasses that don't exist yet than the headset, which is what all of these companies want to do, right? They all want to tell you about how someday, eventually down the line, they'll do all this in glasses.
Mm-hmm.
But the reality is that for the foreseeable future, to do this in a good way at all, you need a headset. And, for as far as headset goes, this looks like a nice design. Do you have any notes on comfort? How did it feel on your head?
It felt nice and balanced on my head. I didn't move very fast because there weren't any games shown in it, but I did walk around the room sort of quickly to test the latency. So the thing that the other, so I led with the strap. The other big category that I need to talk about is Google Earth, Google Maps. It is a killer feature. It's an incredible experience. You need to have this on every single headset. This has been true of Google for decades now, right? When you go back to the original iPhone, it had YouTube and it had Maps. They were both reskinned by Apple as part of like the Apple experience, but there were full Google experiences there on day one for iPhone. And I feel that way very strongly about Google Earth and Google Maps, that's an idea and a platform that is better than just being on Android. Like it needs to be on Vision Pro. It needs to be on Meta headsets. Google Earth was phenomenal. I want to see them continue to iterate and improve upon it. They had the vignetting, the comfort vignetting built into it. I think that's on Google Earth in PC. But just to feel that in standalone was delightful.
So to confirm, was this Google Earth, as in you're flying around a three-dimensional VR version of the world, or was this in a floating window? Just to confirm for the audience.
So they showed me a rapid fire series of all their mapping technologies all at once, including the full Google Earth of me being in. Like I went to Manhattan. I went to my part of Manhattan Island. I pulled myself over there, and my building rendered in 3D, volumetrically, all the buildings in my street in front of me. I went around town and looked around a little bit, but in space in front of me, not in a window.
Sure.
But also, I had windows for like maps as well to interact with those for like directions and things like that.
So one thing that strikes me as very interesting about the design of this headset is that it has optional periphery, just like what we saw with Quest Pro. So what we see here is open periphery, where you can see the real world below you and to the side of you, just because there's nothing blocking your face. But you were also able to try a light seal that would attach onto this magnetically and then allow you to have block out the rest of the world for full immersion. The other aspect here, what I kind of heard from you and I've seen from others that have tried this, is that the field of view is actually quite narrow of the display, of the lenses, sorry. So would you say this field of view felt similar to Vision Pro or narrower than Vision Pro? And how did it feel to have this, admittedly narrow field of view, but combined with a real world periphery Quest Pro style? Talk a little bit about that.
Very difficult. I felt like it was. So I put the headset on, and my very first comment is, "What's the field of view?" Like the very first thing is looking at it. I'm choosing how to fit this on my head myself the best balance I can possibly manage. I turn the dial and I'm like, okay, this is it. What's the field of view? And the one of the representatives is like, well, actually, you should probably try to put the strap at the back of your head more, and then really go a couple notches stronger, tighter on the thing to get a nice, better fit. And then, by doing that, that change was probably 20 degrees difference in field of view, going from just a loose fitting to a strong fitting. And that's part of the reason they're not giving me any numbers there. Was nice to see the periphery. I'm blurring. It had a very low latency pass through. It was nice, nice and low latency. I thought Vision Pro had nicer pass through, I think.
Okay.
But
when you say nicer, do you mean this didn't feel quite as high resolution as Vision Pro, or
there was something different than dynamic range.
Okay.
I think this felt like whiter. The color correction was different in this
lights were a bit blown out, maybe. Okay.
Brighter. It was brighter overall. So I liked that the brightness of the pass through was here was as bright as it was, but there was something about the wide. This could change all dramatically by the time they actually ship this to consumers.
Sure.
We have a lot of people watching. I just want to say thank you to all the viewers. And I see Mark is still doing code distribution duty out there, keeping people watching us. Go support those devs. Go watch the video that we have linked out there. Leave a positive comment. Tell a dev what they've done this year that you liked. Keep that positive, those positive vibes going. Even if a dev didn't get good sales this year, your positive words could really, really make a difference to them. So thank you to all the devs out there.
Question here from Louis or Lewis. I'm not sure which one it is. They're asking about how the eye tracking worked. Was it the same as Vision Pro where you had gaze and pinch? So you're looking with your eyes and clicking with your fingers. Did the eye tracking feel high quality? Did you get to use hand tracking at all? And how was the quality of there? Talk a little about eye tracking and hand tracking.
Yeah, so they had me do no calibration at first. That was the big difference here. So I went in there and you let the headset sit still for a minute, and then the headset into pupillary distance, the displays mechanically separate after a few seconds of it being on your head and still. That's a big step. That was nice to have. And then eye tracking wasn't super useful. Hand tracking was you look around and grab the windows and move them around just like you would expect. Very familiar between Vision OS and Meta OS or Horizon OS, like similar sort of window management here. I asked about face tracking, and I don't think there's face tracking. And they didn't show any avatar mirror of any kind for the eye tracking, so I couldn't be like, this is good enough for expression or anything like that. Even Quest Pro, when they demoed that, they had a mirror demo for you to go and see how the eye tracking worked there. They said they were using it for foveated rendering, but I wasn't using it for much more than that.
Is it one of the things where you don't know what it's like? So you're thinking that you're pointing with your fingers and pinching and grabbing a window, but it's really that your eyes are the one selecting there, because exactly. Because if you have just like a cursor, like a Horizon OS on the Quest headsets that don't have eye tracking, it's a lot more jittery, right? So is this one of those things that the eye tracking in this view really is good because it's so good that you don't even realize that you're using eye tracking?
Yeah, it could be a little bit of invisibility there. It's very weird to go back and forth between Vision 71, 72 on Meta, like that's how quickly they're updating it. And then going from Vision OS 1 to 2, they're updating the betas on us left and right. And then have to go and interact with Windows here and pick apart exactly, like even Figment XR, I've been playing with that for days. And that's the exact same piece of software, but there's little UI differences with managing windows on the Vision Pro version that aren't there on the other versions. And like this felt like an in-between solution, somewhere in between what Meta has, somewhere short of what Apple Vision Pro has in its interface department. But it's hard to like be more specific than that because of what you're
Sure.
saying.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm sure it was a short demo as well overall compared to the kind of time you would have with these other headsets. Do you remember at all when you were in a fully VR thing? Well, firstly, I would ask, how much full VR did you do in this? Was it just the Google Earth experience? And when you were in it, did you have your hands and arms cut out like you do on Vision Pro? Or did you not see your hands and
I
arms in
think the
VR?
hands got cut out in an immersive experience, but it was brief.
Sure.
Uh, I spent most of my time in mixed reality in Gemini. They kept trying to pitch Gemini and having me use Gemini AI for analyzing the room around me. I brought out my Ray-Ban smart glasses, put them on the table because it was the only thing I could think of in the room that wasn't prepared by Google. Like I wanted to pick something that wasn't there in their repository. So I grabbed the Ray-Bans, I put them on the table, circled them like this, and then asked Gemini, what are these? And it guessed that they were sunglasses. Then I looked at all the people over there in the room and said, how many people are in this room with us? And it guessed three, and there were like 8 or 9, depending on whether you counted me.
Sure.
Um,
Yeah, I got that impression from the announcement, right? That they're really trying to push this as like a Gemini thing. And, it's Android XR with Gemini at its core. And, I'm not some like dogmatic AI skeptic or anything like that, as I'm sure viewers know, but it does appear that it's a little bit more marketing than reality. I don't imagine the core use case of this headset really is Gemini. It is the things we talked about, your virtual screens and your immersive experiences. And it just feels like, as they are with all their products, they're kind of just jamming in Gemini and saying, I think even the announcement, they were like, this is the Gemini headsets and glasses, in the same way that I have a Pixel phone and I boot it up now and they changed the boot logo from Google to Gemini just to be
yeah.
like, your phone is using Gemini. And I very rarely use Gemini, and it's a great phone, but the Gemini aspect seems like it's being really shoved down
Oh
our
yeah.
throats here.
Yes, for sure. And I definitely got that impression doing it. Lewis is saying that on their demo that the arms were not cut out. I could be misremembering that. They showed me this stuff back to back to back very, very quickly. And um the bummer that like that I led with the praise of Google Earth, Google Maps. Just that is an amazing, incredible experience, and there's enough just in Google Earth to make a pretty big, strong, and pretty big impression, leave a pretty strong impression on people. Like I would love to see Google Earth demos, Google Maps demos in stores like that. Everyone has a place that they want to go see, and if you can make Gemini voice assistant answer the person 100% of the time to take them to the right location that they call out, you're going to open a lot of eyeballs to the idea that Android XR and VR headsets in general are a real thing. Um, but I don't like. I've gotta also balance that with the impression of just them feeling like it's not finished, of this still feeling like it's a very early in development platform too.
Yeah, I guess that came across to me in the part of your discussions with them where they're talking about controllers, right? So to be clear, from what we've heard so far, this will not include track controllers in the box, but you will be able to purchase some sort of track controllers as an accessory. But they haven't made clear, will that be available at launch? Will it be available after? What's the pricing? None of that is clear yet. But they, to be clear, that is the situation here, right? This is not going to have controllers in the box, but you can buy them separately.
I believe that it's an optional accessory, and that's and there's still the possibility that Samsung could ship multiple models for different purposes. Like they're not committed yet.
Sure.
I don't think on how they package this.
Sure, but I guess if there is a model without them, then developers cannot rely on every single person having them, right? And that is something developers tell us all the time that they really do care about. They really do care about, like, if this platform has eye tracking and hand tracking by default, and every user has that, then that's what they have to, in many cases, build around, unless they want to be just building for a subset. So it's interesting that we will be, as far as we can tell, going to be in a situation where the Meta platform is the one that has the controllers out of the box, and then Apple and Google's, these are an optional accessory. And that's also, it's kind of funny because you always hear this idea of like Meta being the one to do that, and Meta is going to take out the controllers. Meta doesn't care about gaming. Meta just cares about, you know, casual mixed reality stuff. When the irony is that Meta is the company out there that's putting out AAA games like Batman and Asgard's Wrath 2, and including controllers in every headset, even at the lowest SKU. So it's an interesting dynamic. Is there anything?
So,
Sorry, continue.
well, yes, I wanted to talk about the touch typing comment that they gave. Let's talk about touch typing because, David, you've been on these developments this year, and obviously I've got my own demos and things that I've been pursuing in this area, but it is it is a missing piece and a huge complication for all of VR headsets that uh, unless you have a portable keyboard, like you've got a pocket keyboard, when you take your headset out into the world, you've got to do this pinching thing in midair, or with Apple Vision Pro, the Figment XR difference that is so cool is I bring the keyboard up right here and I just pinch, 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 pinch while looking at each letter on the keyboard. My fingers don't actually move. It's a really, really cool thing. But interfacing anywhere and writing out whole articles or responding to reports, that part of what Android pitched here was you can accessorize almost anything. Anything is an accessory for Android. They're going to lean heavily into computer vision and Gemini as like, let's just look at the computer mouse, put it into Bluetooth pairing mode, and boom, it's going to pop into the headset. Like that was kind of the vision they were pitching, that's how easy these things are going to connect to Android. And we'll have to see how that works in the real world at consumer hardware. How well does that magic work? Because until this happens, until you can touch type, you can put down your fingers in the QWERTY row that you've been trained, and many people have been trained to do, and boom, those lock in to the right keys, and then you're typing right there accurately on any surface. Any VR headset is going to feel reduced compared to a laptop or desktop scenario.
Sure. And just to be clear for our audience, this is something that it's not going to be an Android XR at launch, but that they have talked about exploring, just like Meta's exploring it, just like we believe Apple is probably exploring it. And I think their comment was that they could see this happening in the next few years, right? That was their comment, wasn't it?
Sorry, what was that? I was distracted by Guy in the comments.
Sure. I'm just saying that they said that this is something they could expect to arrive in the next few years, that sort of frame.
Yeah, so Google thinks this will be a solved problem within about 2 years, that
Sure.
touch typing on on any surface should be doable.
I think we've seen from the research we've seen out of Meta, that seems likely too, that this will be something that is a possibility. So is there anything else that you want to say about the Samsung headset itself, or do we want to move on to discuss Android XR as a platform and its place in the market?
Let me think here. It's just a steep hill for Samsung to climb. They were there with the Gear VR, they were there with the Odyssey, and there were people who loved those displays and loved what Samsung brought to bear. But it's not enough. Like you've got to bring everything and more to surprise people with things that they didn't expect to be there. I don't know. Google Earth was incredible, but I don't. Samsung needs to. It's really tough to do this whole demo, to come out of it and get quizzed on my thoughts as someone who's into this space. I appreciate it. Like, it's gratifying to feel like they want to know what I think. But on the flip side, ultimately, I want you to tell me what you think. Like, that's the way this works. I want to see it in your hardware design. And I led right off at the very start of the back strap, wanting it to be in a bag and be off your head. Like that's the thing that's going to keep me in VR for 6 hours.
It's a very interesting trade-off. I often discuss on this show how it's the biggest debate in the industry is where do you put the battery, right? So if you put it in the visor, the front of the headset, then the thing feels heavier on your head. If you put it in the rear, then you get a balanced design where the rear battery acts as a counterweight. However, then you can't lie back on a sofa or a bed and have, your giant cinema screen or gigawide gaming setup, whatever you want to have. If you put it in an external battery pack that's tethered, then you get, the ability to lie back, you get a light visor, but then you have something constantly tethered to you, which sucks in a whole bunch of ways that you don't realize until you rely on it. I said it in my Vision Pro review, I never ever forget that damn battery. It's annoying. It does have its advantages, but that's a very real disadvantage. So none of these three options is magically the best, right? It's a frustrating situation to be in. There is no, this is the best, this is the best. They're better for different scenarios. The ideal solution, you would imagine, is that you have a rear battery that can somehow like magically detach and then become an external battery and be tethered out. But how you do that from a kind of hardware design perspective in a way that feels great and is really simple to do, I don't think anyone's really presented a solved solution there yet.
So Mark has given out all the keys. Thank you again, Mark. And he's making this call out to leave a review. It really helps the devs. Also, yeah, the review is the quickest way that you can tell the dev what you thought of the game, and it really, really matters. Sorry, what was that, David?
Sorry, you cut out for a second. I didn't realize you hadn't finished. I was just going to say we have a question from another Mark in the comments that sounds, from what I'm reading about it, sounds like the perfect question for you because it seems to be your favorite Quest app. There's a solution to this, if you see that question.
Yeah, you're asking about the what method do you use for virtual displays over the USB link cable? I'm not always around good Wi-Fi. I want to use my Quest as a virtual screen for 2D content. I did give this comment to Google and Samsung as part of my feedback, and I'd be curious if Guy has any thoughts in this area too. The thing. So
well, do you want to give the answer
HDMI
first?
link. MetaQuest HDMI link is the answer to your question. Go download that app on the store and get a capture card to run your app to your headset, and you're good to go.
So you get a USB capture card off Amazon. You plug that in to the cable that goes to the display port out over USB-C, and then you use the MetaQuest HDMI link app.
So, all right. So David got the answer to your question out of me, but now I want to give the ridiculous the ridiculous direction I want to take this. So Don Hopper and I the other day were trying to figure out whether we could get Figment XR to work for a studio, like a studio another version of this studio, but done all in Figment XR. And it's phenomenal what we got working the other night, where we were co-located. I had basically an outline of his entire house out there in Missouri, and he had an outline of my house in New York. And I could see him walk all the way from his office to his living room, just bobbing over in a headset. And we were outlining places on our living room to block out things. But the reason I'm belaboring this or talking about this is one of the reasons we ended up using Figment instead of the studio was the internet was acting funny for both of us. His internet got reset. For some reason his internet router acted funny. My Wi-Fi router was acting funny, and I'm like, well, let's wire it in. And I got my USB hub connection, and I Ethernetted my headset directly into Figment XR. I turned off the Wi-Fi, and I was still in Figment multiplayer using a wired connection to my system. Well, that same wired connection, this hub that I'm connecting to a VR headset, can also bring in an external display from a Steam Deck or a PC or a Mac, and that's hugely, hugely useful. The thing that I want to ask Guy on, because he virtualizes so many PC screens, and I've just spent a year with Vision Pro, with Quest 3 and 3S. The thing that tends to take me out of headset is some screen that isn't represented inside the headset. That's the trend over time, is like, oh, great, I've got my TV, I've got my PC, but I don't have my phone, and that's where the message just beeped in on. So now let's take the headset off and look at the message on my phone. Okay, well now now I need to actually do work, and it requires me to have my PC and my phone for messages and a Gmail window over here in case somebody messages me during this session. Like, I'm struggling every single day with a different combination of windows and displays and apps that I need to have arranged around me in just the right system to make it work. So that the person that's asking what app to use, and my message to Samsung and Google is that every every display you own in your house needs to come into the headset over time. You're always going to be pulled out by some display that's not represented.
Sure. So I hear your argument, but I want to make a kind of slight counter to it that I think is similar but slightly different to achieve the same thing. I think you're right about the problem, but I don't think I agree with you about the solution. And I think the solution is not to have all your displays brought in, because that's kind of like this clunky way of solving it. It's to have all of your apps and services be available in the headset as well, and notifications. So uh, the appeal of Android XR, or one of the pitches of Android XR over Horizon OS, is that you will get this strong ecosystem integration if you use an Android phone, just like there's a strong ecosystem integration if you use an iPhone and a Vision headset. So for anyone with an Android phone, you open up your Android XR headset and you have all of your existing Google Play apps and services. All of your Google services are transferred over. You open Google Photos and your photos are there. There's no like syncing to your headset. There's none of that. If you're a Chrome user, which is way beyond even just Android phone users, right? A lot of Windows and Mac users use Chrome, the majority, in fact. Then you open up and you have your passwords, your bookmarks, your favorites, all of that ready to go in Chrome. That's something that is going to be the main pitch of this platform, right? A lot of people are asking right now, what is the real selling point of Android XR compared to Meta's Horizon OS? Because they both want to be the same thing. They want to be the open competitor to Vision OS that hardware makers choose. If Meta could snap its fingers and have what it wanted right now, that Samsung headset would be running Horizon OS. And just in the same way, if Google could snap its fingers and have what it wants, the Lenovo and Asus headsets that are being built for Horizon OS would be running Android XR instead. That's what they both want. They both want to be the software platform layer. They want to be the account you sign in with, the store you buy your content from, the middleman for all the transactions to get that 30% cut. But they're going to have to compete for it. And so I think Android XR's real pitch here is that existing integration, not only with Android, but with Google. So even if you're an iPhone user that uses Google services, a lot of the time today, that if you were in your Quest headset, you would have to take out your phone and do something, or take out your laptop. Google's going to hope that over time, more and more of that is just in the headset with you, right? So you get a text, and because just like on your Chromebook, your messages are synced across, I expect we'll probably see something very similar from this, even if not at launch. I'm sure it's something they'll do eventually, right? So the same way today that you have that integration, you get it in the headset. And I assume Apple will do more on that over time as well. And that's something that Apple kind of said when Vision OS was revealed. It was very, very clear of like, not your devices, but your apps. All of your favorite apps are here.
So Hussein asking, will USB-C to Ethernet keep the Quest 3 charged? No, your typical adapter will not, but you can buy ones that will. So I've got multiple of these adapters in every possible configuration. My favorite is the adapter that has Ethernet, HDMI, because I tend to use it with the non-Quest devices too, and then a couple USBs, and then power delivery in is the key feature you want. So as long as it's got power delivery in, that gets passed up to the headset. You can also get extension cords for various USB hubs. Like that they need to sell the headsets before you get to people that need hubs for VR headsets. But I'm arguing that part of the thing that like we get into here is when you try to get into real production scenarios. You talked about like the timeline people who spend their entire day in a timeline watching a 2-hour timeline for a movie, and now they've got a timeline that stretches from all the way over here to all the way over here. That's a real world like change to their user interface that's going to dramatically change everything. Android XR is beginning that journey for Android users, right? Like there's a lot of low-hanging fruit that Apple just didn't care about starting. Like, yes, you can get all your Apple devices into Vision Pro, and yes, you can connect some Bluetooth mice and keyboards. But if Android really does that right, and like you have all of your screens and all of your accessories all with you together, that would be wonderful.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it does seem like this is the Vision Pro for Android users. Effectively, if you're asking, like, what is this? What is its market pitch? I don't think this is designed to take on the gaming aspect of Quest 3. I don't think that Samsung expects that you're going to pay, complete speculation on my part, $2,000 or so to go and play Gorilla Tag, or even to play the other kind of immersive games like Blade and Sorcery and Bone Lab that people play on Quest. I don't think that's the focus here. It opens the question, begs the question, will we see companies, maybe like a Xiaomi or someone, build a low-cost headset running Android XR designed to take on Quest that's like at this kind of $300 to $500 games console price? That's going to be a really interesting question. One of the reasons that Meta can sell hardware at that price is because they are the platform owner. They have that integration so that they can actually just sell it at cost, the same way that Microsoft and Sony can sell their consoles at cost when they launch, sometimes even with a slight loss, because they make the money back. Another company would need a strong incentive to do that. Google could do it themselves. There's no indication that Google wants to make a Pixel headset, but just like when Android launched, they didn't, and then 10 years later they did. We could see that happen here too. It'll be really, really interesting to see what is the spread throughout the market of these Android XR headsets. Is it all just high end? Are we going to see a Samsung $2,000 headset and a Sony $1,500 and a $1,200 at the least, or will we actually see something that's trying to go all the way down and take on Quest 3 directly? It also begs a huge question that we don't really know yet. Are non-Apple buyers willing to spend $2,000 on a headset at scale? Not a couple of 100,000, but a couple of million. Are they? We don't know. The only company that really tends to actually sell significant volume at those sort of prices, even in laptops, is Apple. With MacBooks, Apple has like a 10% or 15% market share for Mac. But if you look at market share for computers that are priced above $2,000, Apple has the vast, 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 vast majority of the share. So it's kind of laptops, to be clear, laptops. It's a really kind of interesting dynamic there. Will that play out in this space as well?
Yeah. Gosh, there's so many things I want to cover here before we close out this segment. And Mark has found extra codes out there in the comments, still dropping them on our audience. Thank you for doing that. Go click on that link and check out that video. Wishlist some of those games, leave a review, let those devs know that you've affected them this year. So let's read the tea leaves into the future a little bit. The thing I brought up in the story. We talk about codec avatars and this long brewing project at Meta. So a couple of years ago, I went out to Meta research and met with Andrew Bosworth and their research teams that were working on the photorealistic avatars. And this was the same demo in which they gave us the Quest Pro first look. So I was trying the face tracking and eye tracking in Quest Pro, and then walking to another building and checking out this PC-based system, communicating with a Meta researcher on the other end of the country. And it felt like he was actually there in front of me. It was phenomenal, incredible technology, but they had to scan this researcher in a lab for hours or a very, very long time, and then process it for a very, very long time to make this possible. Apple went and shipped personas, which I'm going to say aren't at this quality. That they're good, they're very good, but they weren't as good as what I saw in Meta's lab in 2022. The Meta researchers, what was so disconcerting at this demo was, I just came and tried your Quest Pro, but I didn't get to see anything close to these avatars on the actual standalone Quest Pro hardware that you went and shipped. Meta hasn't abandoned this technology. They're not going to stop. There's, like they paid some of the best researchers in the world, including Michael Abrash for years, to put together a dream team of technologies to pursue that they would need in the long term for VR and AR headsets. And this was one of the technologies, photorealistic avatars. If the Samsung and Google partnership sort of leaves this technology by the wayside, at the same time that Meta ships a headset with a partner that knocks this technology out of the ballpark, that actually gets what I saw in 2022 on a PC shipping on hardware that's what, $1,500 is apparently their target that they wanted to hit. If they can get it to $1,500 and have avatars that were that good, Android could feel a little bit old. Like this, everything that Google is doing with Android XR won't hold a candle to photorealistic calls, if that can actually come to pass.
Sure, but I do think we are quite a while away from this level of quality. This is like running on what, 4 high-end GPUs on a PC. To get this running on a standalone headset, I don't think this is going to be like a side feature in a Horizon OS partner headset. This is going to be like a flagship Quest's main feature. Could we see an initial version of this that looks more like Apple's spatial personas in Quest 4? Perhaps. We discussed on this show how that leaked focus group that indicated the Quest 4 might actually have face and eye tracking was out there. So that we could see like an initial version that looks a little bit like this arrive on Quest 4. I don't think it's going to be this sudden moment where Meta releases photorealistic codec avatars that look like what you saw in research. I think it's going to be, there'll be a V1 that looks like this, and then there'll be a V2 3 years later, and then it'll get better and better over time. But I don't think there's anything that prevents Google from doing that, right? This isn't Samsung doing this alone. This is Google's Android XR, and Google is one of the leading AI companies in the world. They already have been working on photorealistic avatars for Project Starline. They're kind of, it's not the same thing exactly. Sure, there are important differences there, but this is something that is not beyond their capabilities. And by the time that Meta does ship a product that actually has codec avatars, there's no reason to say that Google couldn't be shipping a similar thing too. I don't think this is going to be like a magic sauce that only exists at Meta. Perhaps Meta will be the first to get there because they've been working on it for so long, or perhaps the progress in generative AI and machine learning in general means that this just becomes a commodity by the time it launches.
That's interesting. I think I guess that's possible. I think I'm thinking of it too much as a format war. Maybe it's not a format war, but it's like I'm going to want to have meetings of 5-6 people all represented as these kinds of avatars, and the company that does that best is going to be the one that wins long term, I think. I could be wrong on that. There's all these other things that matter, right? But I want this technology to work right, and if Google lags here and doesn't do it right, I don't know. It feels like a miss. It feels like it could be a miss.
Sure. No, I think what you're saying is true. The only thing I would add to that is best and cheapest, because it doesn't matter how incredible your avatar is if the only person you want to talk to can't afford the headset, right? Like right now, these spatial personas that are available right now today on Vision Pro are pretty great. Like they're actually incredible for what they are. They're limited. The ghostly loss of the even upper torso does feel weird in a way. There is kind of like a lack of sharpness to them, but they are incredible. The problem is you've got nobody to talk to because it doesn't matter how great it is if it costs $3,500 from a social connectivity perspective, right? Just like if there was an amazing multiplayer game on Vision Pro that was just the best thing since sliced bread, it doesn't matter because there's nobody else. 500,000 people at most have a Vision Pro out there. I think what matters is when can a company deliver something even close to this for a headset that costs less than $1,000. Because then if you're a business that does need to do these remote meetings, that today endures through this horrible situation we have today where you have this grid of webcams on a screen in front of you that everyone agrees is terrible. And if you don't agree, then you're wrong. It is terrible, right? Webcam grids suck. There's been so much research on this. If you can, as a company, in the same way that you ship them a laptop today, a company laptop, ship your key decision makers a $999 headset that allows them to pop in to a virtual boardroom as a photorealistic version of themselves, that absolutely gets massively adopted. But it's not just the quality, it's the cost.
Sorry, did you cut out there? Thank you to Mark in the comments and for the support, the codes out there, all those free games. Do leave reviews. Let devs know what they've made has affected you. We're gonna be on top of Android XR going to the future. Is there any other subjects here that we want to get into on Android? Because this is a big day. A lot of Android owners out there have been waiting for this. I need to see more. I need more demos. I want David to get inside a headset as soon as possible. You've got Gigodin out there in our comments. Hopefully he tunes in the future. We always appreciate you. Virtual Desktop, he's got answers to your questions about Android XR. I don't know. It's a big day to have a third operating system here, David. And we've had hundreds of viewers here in our audience this entire time. So thank you all for tuning in. Thank you to Mark for sharing those with us. James had a comment. I don't know why David just disappeared on us there. James had a comment I wanted to respond to. I can't remember where it is. Oh, he was talking about the mobile avatars. So, James, I did see their mobile codec avatars. These were avatars from Meta that were scanned by a mobile phone, and they looked like trash. I was really uncomfortable looking at the mobile avatars for even a couple seconds. So what they have to do is figure out how to do it with a headset or a phone at a quality that even is close to personas or the ones on the PC rig with the crazy capture rig.
Yeah, you're just right. The reason they haven't shipped those ones is they just don't look good yet, right? They, exactly as Ian is saying, you have to find a way. If you're in the uncanny valley here, where it looks good enough to look kind of real until if it's at this uncanny valley where it just makes you uncomfortable to look at because it's not good enough to really feel real, but it's too good that it doesn't feel like a cartoon, then that just sucks. What really made Ian's demo on the PC version of this magical is that it did cross that uncanny valley, according to Ian's article, that it really felt like there's someone standing there in front of you. And just like with Lex Friedman's interview with Mark Zuckerberg that we're showing on screen right now, that's what Lex was saying. You know, he was like, holy shit, this passes the uncanny valley. Like, you expect that that's not possible yet, right? You're like, I could never imagine seeing a virtual human that truly passes the uncanny valley so that they literally just look like there's a real person there in front of you. But the magic of Meta's codec avatars in research labs running on 4 GPUs or something like that is that they can actually pass that. And that is the great challenge for Meta in the decade, is how do they bring this down to something that can actually be shipped to product? And that's for a lot of their tech, right? The front display on Apple Vision Pro was shown off in Meta research in 2019, right? A lot of the things that are in Vision Pro were shown off then. There are crazy varifocal holographic optics. All of this stuff is in Meta's research labs, but it's just to make a product or to make a prototype like that isn't as hard as the next step, which is the one that matters, which is how do you make that something that could be mass produced and put into a product that you can sell at a price that people want to purchase.
Mm-mm. Yeah, we've got this brings me back to the part of the demo where they took me to the glasses room, right? And they showed me all the waveguide displays, and they showed me 2 lines of text. Like Google wants to supply services that serve 7 billion people. Like, they want to serve every single person on their planet with their services. How do you produce, like, how do you marry that idea with the idea that VR headsets with pass-through mixed reality aren't a stair step to augmentation? They're a product line that exists in and of itself with use cases that replace PCs, iPads, phones, in various avenues for various people. It's not a stair step to glasses. It's this own thing. And now if you pursue that, if you own that as your part of your company, that yeah, VR headsets aren't a fad. They're the future of personal computing. They replace an existing or multiple displays you already have. Then you start working through all the features that you actually need, right? What do we need this headset to do? And that's where, like, it just feels weird to be having these talks about the strap. Like, it feels like we've moved past controllers. We've moved past there being a hard strap on the back. You need to use these headsets in all scenarios, and you need to accessorize all devices. Like, there's certain things Android is getting right here about the way they're approaching what Android XR does. But to your point about turning it into a product package, I'm nervous about Samsung and Android coming together and getting all of these things right. It's like you don't want a whole bunch of features that are there just because they serve glasses in 5 years. You want things that are useful to VR headset owners now.
Yeah, for sure. And as you're saying, this is still very early, right? They really have only just shown the preview of this. They, as far as I heard from you, they do want to give you a future demo that goes into a bit more detail, and then you can come on here and give us, more details that some of the audience want to hear. But right now, this is literally just them kind of saying, we've teased it for years, we've talked about it, but here it is. Here's a prototype, at least, of the headset. Here's Android XR. Developers are working with it. It's real. Let's move into the future with it. And the one thing I should note, by the way, just before we go off, is that we do have some content already announced for Android XR. So Guy Godin's virtual desktop, as I think he's been saying in the comments, it will be available on Android XR. Gaming wise, Job Simulator and Vacation Simulator will be available, as well as Demio. And we will keep a close track on what content gets announced for Android XR over time. Right now, this is nothing that isn't already on Vision Pro from the gaming side. Job Simulator, Vacation Simulator, Demio, they're on Vision Pro. I think it's going to be quite a similar situation where whatever would be suitable for Vision Pro would also be suitable for Android XR, although the difference is it's actually easier to port from Quest to Android XR than Vision Pro, because Android XR supports OpenXR. It is fundamentally structured around OpenXR. So porting between Horizon OS and Android XR and Pico and HTC is a lot easier than when you go out of that OpenXR ecosystem and go over to Apple's Vision OS, where they have their own APIs and they are not supporting the industry standard.
Yeah, well, Guy in the comments is suggesting that it's an easy port process. Given that we have the meta avatars, how hard is it for us? Like, what would we would be on the harder end of the list of porting, right?
Everything
because of the
except
meta
avatars would be trivial.
Yeah.
But you can use a different avatar system. You can use Ready Player Me, their avatar system. You could also use like a default meta avatar where you pick from like a pre-selection of 16 pre-made ones. But anything else, yeah, we're an OpenXR app. It's the same situation. As Guy Godin said, and it's like you have the situation that is mirrored in a lot of other categories in tech. You've got Apple and you've got everyone else, and everyone else are on the open standard, and Apple are on their own standard. And I don't think we ever expected anything else, did we?
Yeah. So there was a one comment very early in the show from one of our commenter viewers out there that they make VR games in their underwear in their living rooms, and that's their career, and they want to keep doing it. That's what we as people who put on VR headsets, right? We don't believe in the commute to work. I don't believe in the commute to work unless you've got a very specialized job that requires physical access to devices. You can do your work from home, and it's beautiful to see that journey, right? Like it feels a little lonely out there to not be near faces. And honestly, what's one of the things I've been learning over these last few weeks in conversation with our community, with so many viewers out there, it's universal for devs to go and watch the YouTube videos of people playing the games that they just released out there into the world. And if that's so beautiful to me to see and know that the internet is reaching people out there. Like, it's this beautiful cycle of people creating and then making and then feeding back. and we have that in our audience.
You got a
Oh, remote
stri-
work was a huge mistake. Wabo, what the heck?
got a huge. That's why I was laughing. Sorry, just as you were saying that, you have this wobble coming in, going, "Remote work is a curse upon humanity."
I I think
Yeah.
your coworkers that you don't want to see are the curse. I think your workplace that you don't want to go to is the curse. You're cursing the wrong things out there, Wabo.
So
Oh my gosh.
I mean, I think for now, and with the technology space we have today, obviously we're only talking about intellectual jobs here. It doesn't make sense for a physical job to be remote. That's impossible unless you have like a teleoperated robot. But for now, I hybrid is a good idea if you're limited by the technologies of today, which is, a webcam grid to communicate with people. But one of the promises of VR and mixed reality is that you can bridge that gap and be able to have the same feeling of being in an office and having the kind of connection with people while you're anywhere on the planet. And then that opens access to talent pools that aren't geographically limited, right? You're not just hiring the people who are within a 25-mile radius of your position. You can hire whoever the best person is for that specific job, regardless of where they are in the world. Um, but for now, we're still, I mean, one of the things we've been continuously talking about here with these codec avatars is how important they are for telecommunication. We have to just keep harping on this point because it is true. The remote communication technologies of today suck. They are terrible. Holding a rectangle in your hand and seeing like a webcam view of someone, or even seeing it on a slightly bigger rectangle with a bunch of 2D disembodied faces, is a really, really bad way to communicate with people. And so I can totally understand that if that's your technology experience, then you may think remote work sucks, okay? But if you imagine a future where you can have your coworker teleport into your room as a photorealistic avatar and work with you on arbitrary monitors and screens and apps wherever you're placing them, while also bringing in 3D objects when, if you're designing something physical, that's a completely different situation. And that's in many ways the promise of AR and VR.
Yeah, David and I come into the studio every week, live as often as we can, and this is the most I ever get to see David Heaney, my coworker of the last 5 years, right? And when he comes into the studio, I see his mannerisms, his hands movements. We've got a rapport back and forth now. I know when he's finishing speaking most often. I can pick up. These are things like you learn by actually working close with people, feeling like seeing them face to face. These are all things that David and I have learned about one another simply by looking at each other in in this studio once a week and interacting with our audience. And it's the problem you're complaining about, the people that are complaining about work from home not working is because you don't typically want to see your coworkers. I love talking to you about this stuff, David. This is enormously fun, but that's not most jobs, right? And the people you have to go to coworkers want, you're trying to escape work by coming home. That's a completely different thing. And so, we've got to have our conversations in completely different places about what actually needs to change here because everything that you and I would get out of working face to face, we get out of VR. And I didn't have to ask you to come over from England to the United States, and I didn't have to go over to England.
Yeah, exactly. And even on a smaller scale, think of all the time that is wasted. Think of the collective time that humanity wastes driving from your house to a building to sit at a desk in front of a computer when there is already a computer at a desk at your home. All of that time, you're in that car, you can't do any work. You're completely non-productive. You're not getting any physical activity out of it. It's not like if you walk somewhere that, at least you're getting your daily steps. And then at the end of the day, you have to do the same thing again. You get back into traffic, you get into a car, you drive from an office back to your home, and ask yourself how much did that being at a desk at a building that a company is renting and paying bills on really matter compared to just getting up, walking to your desk and doing the same work at home?
Yeah, and the coworkers you need, the people who are aligned with you, are in another time zone, right? You can reach them, and you just have to figure out how to approach a workplace and find a line of work that works for you, and you'll get there. I'm seeing these companies. Go read the story about Arkham Shadow and how it got made across 4 time zones globally with a person at the head of the team, the game director, basically saying, I'm going to hold a meeting at 5 in the morning, my time in Japan, and then I'm going to hold another meeting at 9 or 8 p.m. my time in Japan in order to set the pace of work across all of these time zones and get them iterating builds and improving art and getting bug fixes ironed out on this journey. Like, that's going to happen more. It is happening more. And if you've got any interesting tips out there on how you work from home and how you get your job done, if you're operating a large business or a large company team remotely, email tips at uploadvr.com or ian at uploadvr.com, because we know you're out there and we know that it's happening, and just people need to be shown the light a little bit on how to get that done. Any final comments, David? Are we ready to close out?
No, I think we can close out the show now. It's been a great discussion today. I just want to say that I'm so glad that we're back live. We love having you in our live audience and having a real direct discussion with you. It's great to have this, and hopefully we can keep as many live shows and as few pre-recorded, although there's obviously always going to be things that happen on Thursdays that prevent that from happening occasionally.
Mark Schramm saying Starship Home was developed fully remote. We had people in Australia, Europe, and all U.S. time zones. Yes, I know what it's like to work with the midnight time zone over there in Australia. And those are the people that woke me up to this idea, right? Like, there's amazing work that can be done with you and for you in cooperation with you by people who are just, awake when you're asleep, and you can do that magic out there. So find them, find your people, start your companies, do that work. Use a VR headset.
Very interesting
right.
comment from Methos Ohio here, saying that they go to church in VR. Being able to meet with people in VR is extremely effective. That's very interesting. Let us know what platform you use that on. Is that VR Chat, Rec Room, Horizon World, something else? Let us know, please. That's very interesting.
Yeah, and there's of course AA meetings. I've seen multiple Narcotics Anonymous or Alcoholics Anonymous meetings being held in VR. That's you got to flip. You got to flip these conversations around. You're having them in the wrong places. Yes, video chat windows are horrible. It's absolute crap to get on a video call grid, but if you put on a VR headset, you don't even have to put your makeup on. You don't have to do your hair right. You don't have to put on a clean shirt. As disgusting as it is, before you show up to your work meeting in this suit, so to speak. And it goes to that old adage that good bosses really, really straight, bring across. As long as the work gets done, I don't care how you do it. All right, I think we're ready to close out this show, David. I want to say thank you to you for getting us together here today. Thank you to Mark again for the codes. Go check out the video that we've got at the top here, pinned in the chat. Go review the games that you got. If you got a code, go tell a dev that they've affected your life, that you do like spending time in their worlds. It matters. They feed on it, and keep that cycle going to the future. We will see you next week. We'll see you.
Thanks so much, everyone. We'll see you in the future.